Well, I mean, now we talk about like talk that can maybe get annoyed at times, especially for certain people. It's like, is the conversation about realignment, and as we know, it's like it almost like had been dormant for a while, and then the wheels started turning when Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were heading to the SEC. And then we started hearing the rumor mill about Gonzaga. And then shortly thereafter, I mean, the shocker to everybody was when UCLA and USC announced they were going to the Big Ten. And now it seems that especially the Western Conference schools, whether it be the Pac-12, the Mountain West, or even the Big 12, is now in pure chaos, because now it seems like every possibility is open. Everything could possibly happen. It's like Oregon and Washington could end up in the SEC. They could end up in the Big Ten. Arizona and Arizona State might go to the Big 12. Cal may end up in the Mountain West because they have nowhere to go. Because all of these possibilities are starting to like be thrown out. But the one thing obviously like that is kind of like the one thing that is hiding behind all of this is what happens to the WCC. We already know BYU, this is their swan song in the conference. They're leaving, they're gone. The rumor about Gonzaga, how strong it is, when it will happen, if it will happen, I'm going to say, for argument's sake, they go, regardless of where it is, whether it's the Big East, Pac-12, wherever. Let's in the near future, Gonzaga finds the right spot and they're out the door. What happens to the rest of the WCC? What happens to the remaining 8? And here's where, like, me being the St. Mary's alum, me being a person who will ride that one to the end. If Gonzaga goes with BYU already going, I'm on the phone. Will I looking for the door too? Because if St. Mary's of all programs doesn't do that, we're Vermont. We turn into Vermont. And the rest of the conference turns into the America East.
Yeah, it's wild that this is like, we all know that the doors are closing, right? And we all know that this is going to happen sooner or later. It's just the pieces falling, but still, it feels like we're still going to be scrambling. We all know it's happening, but we're all trying to get to that terminal on time to not be missing out on whatever's next. And I don't know. I feel like, does the WCC try to hold on and be like what the Big West is with baseball and other sports, with basketball, trying to be like the premier low mid major conference for that, with like a couple teams every few years that could really fight for, hell, even earning 2 at-large bids. Another conversation is whether or not the NCAA, with all this happening, is going to change the tournament to accommodate for all of these realignment teams and screw mid-majors, which makes the run for these 8 teams even more important.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one I really hope doesn't happen, because like, if I would hope that St. Peter's this past season was like proof to everybody that your most valuable asset in the NCAA tournament isn't even the Blue Bloods or the title contenders. It's the Cinderellas. They're the value for the first 2 weeks. That's what carries you for the first half of this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, do you think, how realistic, because the one school that it feels like has the goods to like warrant moving to another step if they don't want to be now the big brother of the rest of the WCC. Do you think St. Mary's makes the jump, or do you think St. Mary's is perfectly fine standing pat?
You know what? I'm starting to think about this. St. Mary's has 4 Mountain West teams on their schedule this year, and potentially a 5th if things fall right in the Wooden Legacy. Are they essentially, this is their tryout for the Mountain West? The last couple of years, even they had, I think, 3 or 4 on the schedule a year ago. Like, they have a bunch of Mountain West teams on this schedule, and I'm starting to wonder if, like, hey, is this going to be their tryout? Are they basically like, they've already made the call, they've already had the conversations, like, and they're like, if Gonzaga goes, we'll be ready.
Yeah, and I mean, no insult to Gonzaga kryptonite Randy Bennett, but he absolutely coaches a style of offense that would fit just right with that Mountain West basketball mindset
Right.
of nails on defense and nails in the basketball on offense.
I
Let's
mean,
just
yeah, especially you look at even the teams that they're going to be playing like this year. It's like whether it be San Diego State, Colorado State. It's like these are teams that yeah they're going to just like scratch and claw and
if
play
they
as dirty as possibly can to get a win.
if they if they play San Diego State this year, like legitimately, do you think that that score of that game is going to be lower than any of the San Diego State football games? I feel like a San Diego State football game is going to outscore that game.
I mean, I when they played last year, I remember saying to a few people it was good like first to I think it was first to 45 wins.
Oh
And
my god!
sure enough, I think the final was like 52 to 47 or something like that. and and yeah, it was as awful of an offensive watch as you possibly could think of. I mean, both those teams are just so good defensively, and St. Mary's is going to be, I think, just as good defensively. And considering you still have Logan Johnson in that backcourt, Kyle Bowen is still there. Alex Duke is as versatile as anybody. But yeah, I'm just thinking it's like it looks it. It would seem to me that some of the due diligence may has already have been done, and that maybe we're seeing some of that in the schedule that St.
Yeah,
Mary's actually has.
yeah. I mean, like that would be a great spot for St. Mary's. I mean, there's still my big tinfoil hat dream of Gonzaga taking St. Mary's and somebody from the Mountain West with them to join the Big East, so it becomes a bigger satellite conference of sorts.
Yeah.
Uh, because yeah, I mean the big look. I'm excited that we're having this conversation, Zach, because I was called a lunatic just a matter of months ago. Pretty much from May onwards. Jeff Goodman, other
Yeah.
folks have said that I am a monger of bad rumors. So the fact that now we're really having a conversation about this is fascinating to me. I look forward to Gonzaga joining the Big East, but not at the stake of the beautiful West Coast Conference because where I've done a 180 where like back in the day when other schools weren't really investing in their sports
Mhm.
in the way to really be competitive with Gonzaga outside of St. Mary's, and then when BYU joined, it is so cool to see Pepperdine slowly coming back on the trail. You have San Diego with Steve Lavin having
Yep.
everybody just waiting for them to arrive. You have Portland now with Shantae actually having a successful basketball program. They like I can't decide how high I need to cut them off from the top of the rankings this upcoming season
Yeah.
because I think they're going to be special. Shout out to my guy Austin King on the sideline. But like it's just it's what happens to this conference if Gonzaga leaves? Do they just say, okay, now we don't have to do this anymore? Like, do you envision that? Do you think that it's going to be St. Mary's in San
There,
Francisco?
I think there's a scenario where there's a scenario where at the very least for a couple years it's St. Mary's, USF, and then everybody else. And maybe the everybody else includes like maybe Portland does break into that actually top tier because as we see, like that program is getting better. It does look like that there have also been feelers put out for expansion of like, I mean, I know like there are plenty of people who don't like the idea, but Grand Canyon makes a lot of sense. There are plenty of people who don't like that, but they make a
Hi,
lot of
Zach.
sense.
They make a lot of sense in everything but the fact that they're a for-profit
Yeah.
institution.
It's like
Uh,
they're academics, they're like everything but athletics.
maybe it's the fact that the Pac-12 turns their nose at Gonzaga because they're not a research school and then they don't have a football team. That I'm doing this in my own capacity to a smaller university, but I was not excited about the idea of Grand Canyon replacing BYU, but I think
you can't replace BYU.
right. You can't replace BYU, and it was just a question of like why if you're a Gonzaga fan in particular, and this is very Gonzaga centric, so I apologize, but like why would you want to have another team in the conference to have another game you'd have to play in the conference when you could try to schedule more non-conference games? And like honestly, with St. Mary's, I don't think Grand Canyon's a great basketball program yet. So for
No.
St. Mary's, they could do some of these neutral site tournaments. They could place
Yeah.
these neutral site games instead of having to play another, so-so team that could be special one year, could be a clunker the next.
Right. And because all the options, like whether like you looked at them or Denver or Seattle U or like Cal Baptist, like none of them in my eyes are like they're ready. Like none of them are ready for the WCC, and some of them may never be ready for the WCC. Honestly, like some of them are way too far away. They've had too many chances to get better, and they haven't done it. Cal Baptist is actually maybe one of the more interesting ones on that list because they're new to D1 relatively, and they might actually get there in a few years, but they're still 5 to 10 years away, I think, from being on that level. But yeah, it's like it's just fascinating to kind of like talk about all these different scenarios because everything is just like a pipe dream. You're just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, because right now it's like there's so many unknowns. So much of it is tied to obviously the football schools and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. You have basically the two basketball conferences, the Big East and the WCC, kind of like laying in wait of like, okay, what is everyone going to do? And how is this going to impact all of us? Even with the Mountain West, of like, is the Mountain West really going to take schools that don't play football if they get poached for half their league by the Pac-12?
Yeah, I have so many questions. I have questions about what happens to these athletic departments as the middle caves away. Like, do these low-level mid-majors actually continue to invest with the aspiration of building something to become profitable so they can make the leap to a bigger conference like the WCC or then even to the Mountain West, But like why would Cal Baptist, if things continue the way they're going and the institution of academia is also becoming an unprofitable nonprofit situation,
Mm-hmm.
how do you envision a way to like justifiably invest in the way you would need to maintain the level of play that the WCC has currently?
This Right, because he even in the scenario, let's take Gonzaga leaves, BYU's already out the door. How much more are you going to have to invest to even compete without those two around? Because
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about just like the surface level stuff, like the on-court competitiveness, but if you don't have those two teams, you don't have 4 automatic games to say we're going to play 4 top 50 games here. We're going to play. So it's harder to recruit. It's harder to fundraise. It's going to be harder the TV deal, the ESPN deal probably starts to look a lot different without Gonzaga being part of it, without BYU being part of it. What is that? And so again, like the economics of the rest of the conference start to change, even just even without all of that. So yeah, so just even thinking about just where this conference is going to be just on the economic front, like I feel like this is just everyone is going to be in a hard spot whenever, if ever, Gonzaga leaves. What happens to everybody else? Because I mean, you could think like some of the schools look like they have the resources, like USF can fundraise like nobody's business. Santa Clara can fundraise like nobody's business. But not everyone in the conference can. So I don't know, like if can they invest more to make up the difference, or are we looking at maybe the potential end of the WCC because the economics are just going to catch up with them?